Well, Happy New Year. Happy first Sunday of the year. So blessed and grateful and feel actually trusted that Derek would invite me to speak on the first Sunday of 2024. And he had a good excuse for not being here. He and his son were invited to go on a hunting trip that was sponsored by a group that takes students and their fathers, I think mostly pastors and their fathers, and they take them out and they teach them to hunt, and they show them how to have a good time in hunting. And there's a picture of them with their having accomplished much. So I think this organization actually now processes it and brings it to their home. So very nice for them to do that. So it's a well-valued organization, and I'm glad that they're able to take advantage of that. But as we begin this morning, let's start with prayer. Father, thank you. I thank you for the opportunity that you've given me this morning to come and share you with the people called Collective. Father, I pray at the end of this message that they not even know my name, honestly, that they know who you are, and they draw closer to you in an intimate and personal way, and they start their year out saying, man, I really want to know more about God. I want to know how to relate to him even better. So, Father, thank you. Thank you for this group. They could have been doing anything else this morning, but they've decided to show up. Now I pray that you would speak to them in a significant way. It's in your name I pray. Amen. Sorry, my throat's a little rough. I've been trying to fight off something. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about something that God has been dealing personally with me over the last, I would say, probably 4 or 5 months, and it's humility. And the two scriptures that I wanted to use, it says, 1 Peter 5 is the second part of that. It says, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but shows grace to the humble. And then the next part, it says, be humbled then under the powerful hand of God, that he may exalt you in good time. So I was questioning why God would, I was struggling in a particular area. I'll tell you about that in just a little bit. But why would God be pointing out my lack of humility at this stage in my life? As a matter of fact, I would have told you I'm very proud of how humble I am. And I think that I pretty much figured it out. But you never get too old for God to begin to teach you lessons as long as you're willing to listen. And so I have just been struggling through this particular season in my life in my 60s, we'll say. I'll let you know when I'm 70, but not until then. But here, I'm consistently, throughout my 35-year plus in ministry as a chaplain, as a pastor, I've always been an anxious speaker. And so as we journey through this, I want you to know what I want you to know up front in case we don't get there, once we head off on a rabbit trail. As a follower of Christ, humility is an important characteristic to show to the world. However, it is one of the most overlooked and under-demonstrated. And by that I mean that there are a lot of prideful, and I'm going to even say arrogant, believers in this world who want you to know how much they know instead of wanting you to know how much Christ loves you and has a plan for you. But they want you to be proud of them for having interceded in their life. Another point that I want to make sure you come away with is people often focus on the attributes and characteristics of Jesus that have the ability to bring attention to themselves. Jesus' boldness, his fearlessness, his power, his authority, and the many other attributes that we identify with Christ are the ones that are most attractional to us. However, we often attempt to do those things with a total lack of humility. We find a niche in our lives, and we head in that direction, and we want to show and prove how aggressively we go after the lost, or how powerful we are in our communication skills, and there's a variety of different things. But at the end of the day, isn't that pride instead of humility? Humility is, in my opinion, a superpower that can assist you in bringing others into the kingdom. Most of us who have been involved in the Christian community for any length of time are familiar with leaders who are prideful, arrogant, boastful, and who totally lack humility. And by even saying that, it's an indication that I lack humility. I'm able to judge them and pick out those sorts of things. And so you can see, as I've processed this, I've found that most of my arrogance, most of my life probably has been about a lack of humility. If I'm offended, or if I can point out your fault, then it makes me superior in some way. Instead of building God's kingdom, they are busy building their own kingdom. And you know what I love about this church is that we're here. Derek is here, and I believe God appointed Derek and his family at the right time in history to build the kingdom in a community that desperately needs it. As I've interacted with some people here, and as I've gotten to know people in our small group and whatever, I just do not see a lack of humility. I see people who are willing to do whatever and go wherever and serve wherever. They're not trying to sell you something. They're not trying to make themselves more important than they actually are. Instead, they're just loving Jesus, and they want you to love Jesus too. And they're willing to work out their salvation with fear and trembling in a group setting. And so that's what I love about Collective. It's just honest. It's just down to earth. There are more cowboy hats in this church than in most churches. I just love the down-to-earth aspect of it. So as I looked at it, I want to identify what is humility. Humility is simply the lack of pride. Humility is understanding your significance and importance to God, yet feeling the need to not boast about it. Humility is meekness, and meekness does not mean weakness. Humility is being fully surrendered to God and allowing Him to control every aspect of your life. So if you could just boil what is humility down to one phrase, it is just full and total and complete surrender to God. And that's what you see in Jesus' life, right? You see that He was fully surrendered to the Father, yet He was fully God, He was fully man, and yet He said, I'm going to, whatever the Father tells me to do, go right, go left, go forward, go back, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it with a genuine love for people. And so submitting completely and totally to God, which is a daily experience. Actually, to me, it's a minute-by-minute experience, because I have every opportunity along the way to find that at the end of a conversation, let's say, I haven't followed God in that conversation. I've allowed other people to direct the way in which I approach them, or the conversation that we have. And so full surrender is something that you wake up in the morning and you say, Father, today what can I do to be fully surrendered to you? Help me to not make the mistakes today that I made yesterday. Help me to be so connected to you, despite all of the opportunities in my environment to stray away. With my eyes, with my tongue, with my hands, with whatever. Help me to not do that. So that's a daily admission, it's a daily surrender, it's a daily submission to God. And I think that's what humility is all about. Well, the thing that brought me to this place, so I've told this story before, but you may not have been here, and you may not care to hear it again, but here we go. So I've been a pastor, chaplain, for most of my career, and it's just been in the last 2 years where I was, the company that I was doing chaplaincy for is an oil and gas company. They let me go. I was full-time there, and they let me go. But there has been an insulation between me and, let's say, the world my whole career, because the way in which people speak to each other, let's say, the way in which people communicate with each other, they would not respectfully do that to somebody who was a pastor or who was a chaplain. They reserved that for people that they deemed not of the religious or the clergy communication or community. And so I had that insulation. And so I took this opportunity about a year ago with it was 2 years ago. I became the chaplain for a medical supply company. And did that for about a year, and so was able to try and build other clients to be the chaplain for their organizations as well. But then they had an opportunity within this medical supply company they needed somebody to manage their warehouse. And so I said, okay, yeah, I'd like to do that. It's additional income, good opportunity maybe as the chaplain to interact with these people on a different level. And so I took that opportunity. Well, what I found was that the insulation as a chaplain between me and them was immediately severed. So as the warehouse manager, I was just another one of the employees. And as a matter of fact, I was an employee that was at the lowest end. I don't make as much as them. I don't have the authority that they do. And there was a learning curve that was really challenging for me. You know, all these medical supplies and all these parts that are going in people's bodies and all these things, these surgery implements. And they expected someone to just walk in there and know it immediately. And I wasn't that guy. And so then, as I said, then the communication began to be, I was communicated with the same way that they communicated with each other. And they have a culture of being pretty strong with each other, if you understand what I mean. And it's mostly on text. And I despise text. Don't text me. And anyway, so their communication with me, and my response to their communication was less than humble. You're going to talk nasty to me. I'm going to text you back in the same fashion. You know, you clearly you do not know who I am, and they didn't care. So anyway, it's through that process, the snarky talk, the demeaning talk, the disrespectful talk, the why didn't you do this? Why don't you know this? We've told you this before. It's like, dang. So it's through that process where God began to say to me, you know why you are offended at this is because you are not a humble person. You are offended at what they say. You're offended at how they're approaching you, and this is going to be your season of humility. Well, I didn't like that at all. But I began to realize, okay, the more humble I am in this situation, the less, it's not that the less they demean or disrespect or discourteous, it means that it doesn't bother me anymore. They can say what they want. They can act in any way they want. They can approach life in any way they want. But what I have noticed is the moment their relationship goes south, the moment they have a sick grandparent, the moment that they are having some challenge in some way, maybe even within the company, who do they call? Who do they want to spend time with? And so I'm hoping humility will help bridge the gap between me being a warehouse worker and me being a chaplain in a way that brings glory to God. So as you look through the Bible, you see some general, and I say this like it was just, no big deal, but some activities, some actions, some characteristics of Jesus that demonstrate his humility. And I think that's where we have to look if we're going to see and know how to humbly respond in this life. But I'm calling it a general sense, but I don't like that word. So Jesus left heaven to come to earth to save the world. So this is God, the God of all creation, became man And he left this beautiful place called heaven that we are all believing and hoping and trusting that we're going to see someday. And we're told all the stories about how magnificent and how wonderful it is. He was willing to leave that to come to this. And we are all aware that this is not heaven, right? And we are all looking forward someday to being in heaven. And so he was willing. He humbled himself and came here. He humbled himself to die on the cross for the sins of the world. The God of all creation, and no other proclamation of any other type of God does it say this about him, but he died on the cross, which is a miserable death, to come. He humbled himself to save us. He rode into Jerusalem on a donkey, which is a symbol of royalty and humility. So, most kings, most rulers, most people in authority, they don't come in on a donkey, right? The Rolls Royce, a diamond-encrusted chariot. I don't know. But he chose to come in as the king of the world, as the savior of the world, on a donkey. He humbled himself. He spent his life in the service of others with no regard for fame or fortune. He wasn't looking for his name to be in lights. He wasn't looking for any sort of fame or acclaim. Instead, he said he just met with people, served them, and told them the truth, and they came to know him. That's the type of humility that we need to have as well. We're not looking for fame or fortune. We're not looking to be known in great circles. But maybe in a great circle you could have some great impact, and maybe that's God's plan for you. But for the most part, that shouldn't be the end game for us, right? We should be just serving humbly just because Jesus showed the example. He was others-focused and affirmed the value of others. He's not the type of person that in the midst of you telling them their story, they're telling your story about, the hardships or the challenges or the whatever they faced. And he didn't break in and go, well, you haven't heard anything yet. Let me tell you about how hard I've had it. Well, this wasn't about you. This was about them. And, we live in a world where many times people want to one-up us in their conversations with their story is harder, their illness is worse, their relationship challenges are more difficult. They're the first on the planet that's ever had this type of challenge. Well, sorry, but you're not. There are many before you. But Jesus didn't do that. He stayed other-focused. I put down some things that I wanted us to think through, practical ways to reflect God's humility. First off, humbly acknowledge God in everything. I'm not saying that you need to be so pious that you are unrelatable. I just give grace and thanks and praise to God for every little thing. I didn't trip as I came in, and that's unrelatable. But for most of us, I don't think we are going to fall into that category. But I think we should humbly acknowledge God in everything that we do. Everything that we have here in this building, I can say, having been here since we were at the school and now here, God is providing this, and there's no one else that can lay claim to this. The former church gives you a building and gives you the debt associated with it. Hey, no big deal. We'll take it too. But that's only something God can do. So acknowledge God in everything. Confess and repent of pride. That's one way I think that we can begin 2024 is begin to do a self-evaluation and say, hey, these are areas in my personal life where I have been prideful and I have been arrogant and I've shown lack of humility. And we just confess those. In Romans 12:3, it says, don't think you are better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves, measuring yourselves by the faith that God has given you. So confessing and repenting of our lack of humility is an important factor. Number 3, stop grumbling. Any form of grumbling, whining, or protesting stems from a spirit of self-entitlement and self-righteousness and demonstrates a total lack of humility. Philippians 2 says this, "Do all things without grumbling or questioning, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world." So the grumbling that we do, let me ask you this. All of the grumbling that you've done, all the complaining that you've done, all the bickering that you've done, what did it accomplish at the end of the day? It didn't accomplish, it probably, most likely, and I know for myself personally, it didn't change a thing. In fact, it made me look bad. It made me feel bad. And so whining, grumbling, complaining about something is a huge demonstration of a lack of humility. Humble people don't pass judgment as well. Matthew 7:1 says, "Judge not that you be not judged. For with the judgment you pronounce, you will be judged, and with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." That's a huge caution, red flag. So with the judgment I pass on other people, it's going to be coming back to me. Out of all humility, I should not in any way then begin to pass judgment on other people if I just want to protect myself. But that shouldn't be the reason. You shouldn't do that, because Jesus showed the example. He did not judge other people. He did not reject people because of their status, because of their occupation, because of their religion. He was inclusive. He wanted everyone to come and to know that the only way to the Father is through the Son. And so that, in fact, made him more inclusive. Stop seeking attention. Humble people don't seek attention. Some people enjoy drawing attention to themselves by being pushy, boastful, crude, or antagonistic. All this behavior is driven by the innate belief that other people should listen to or follow them. Humility, on the other hand, will gently consider others first. Philippians 2:4 says this, "Let each of you look at not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others." You know, I said that I have always been an anxious communicator. And it was only till recently that I realized that my anxiety comes from an expectation that at the conclusion of my message, I would be lauded, applauded, and celebrated, and they would want my autograph. It just never happened. And so when you begin to give that up and you realize that, hey, at the end of the day, all I want to be heard is Jesus speaking through me, God speaking through me, and saying to people that need to hear it what they need to hear. So I'm not an attention seeker. Admit mistakes and weaknesses readily. That's what humble people do. That was one of the challenges that I faced with this new position, is that, yes, I was making mistakes right and left. Okay, this instrument wasn't included in this surgery tray. And honestly, I didn't know what goes in these trays. I had no idea. I don't know. I had never been in a surgery. Therefore, I don't know what you do in the surgery, and I don't know what utensils or implements go in the. That's the responsibility of the rep or the doctor. And so I could easily get defensive about that and go, well, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. But then as God has been working on me humbly, I start saying, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry that wasn't there. And before I do this again, I want to know exactly what's in these trays. I want somebody else to confirm that this actually is all ready to go. And so rather than blaming others, I accepted the blame and then asked for assistance. Consider others as more important. That's what humble people do. Philippians, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. So I think that's an important thing, is that so often we believe that we're entitled and that we deserve this or that. And at the end of the day, the truth is that our sins do not deserve the grace and mercy that God has shown to us. And that's every one of us, and that's every day. That's just not, when I was young, I did this and that, and I know that God has forgiven me. And so I stand, and I'm very proud of the fact that God has forgiven me, and I don't make those mistakes again. But I guarantee that there are things that we are all doing that we need to consistently ask God to forgive us of. So here's some specific things that God has kind of worked on me personally about during this season in my life. I talked about the fact that the communication there is a little rough, and it's a place where I've never been spoken to by text. You tell it to my face, and then we'll tangle in the parking lot. But no, not just joking. They would win. They're all younger than me. But it's an area where God has been working on me personally. But you know what? Jesus did not feel the need to reply to snarky, disrespectful comments. So there's a story that is told about the woman that was being stoned for adultery. And all these guys are here with their rocks, and Jesus steps into the situation. Doesn't say a lot. And he just stoops down on the ground. He stoops down and starts writing on the ground. Some people speculate that he was writing down, this is theologians, and they weren't there, so how do they know? But they were speculating that he was writing down the sins of the people, the religious men that were standing around. And they looked over and they saw him, and they were like, oh, wow, I'm about to stone someone, and I'm just as guilty. Other theologians speculate that when he stooped down to write on the ground, the religious people recognized that what he was saying is the same God that wrote on the tablets the law is the same God that's writing now on the ground. And because they were so ashamed and because they were just in awe, they put their stones down and they walked away. Jesus didn't have to say a thing to a snarky response. He did not have to say a thing. When I've started applying that to the texts and not responding in any way, it just goes away. It doesn't encourage it. It doesn't bring it into more light. Instead, it dissolves. I don't know the mindset behind that. If it was seriously important enough to put it in a text, surely it would be important enough to follow through with it or carry it to the end. But clearly it isn't. I don't say anything, they don't say anything, and we just go on our way. Another thing that is a great example of Jesus' humility is that he washed others' feet. It's about service, right? How many of us grumble about the service that we contribute to other people? So a part of my responsibility in this new role is mopping, cleaning toilets, making sure things are organized, and all a part of the, very cleanly place, making sure the refrigerator's stocked, all of those sorts of things. And the number of times that it said, why isn't this here? Why isn't that there? This looks messy today. I'm just like, oh, this is a little hard, Lord. But when you begin to respond with, I'll absolutely connect with you next time I make a grocery store run and make sure that everything that you want is there. Or, I'm sorry, I'll do better next time. When I start doing that, it turns into them, I think, recognizing, man, this old guy is doing this job, and I think I probably need to be nicer to him. He's my grandfather. Would I treat my grandfather that way? And but Jesus did that. He didn't really care. He washed dirty feet. He served them at the Lord's Supper. He was there. He was there for them, and he didn't expect any celebration or accolades or any acknowledgement. Humility gives us permission to not have that. I think in spouse relationships, in a marriage relationship, I think the goal should be for you to outserve your mate, for you to outserve your spouse. And when we do that, When we don't have this entitled, expectant attitude, why aren't my clothes clean? Why isn't dinner ready? Why didn't you take out the trash? When we don't have those verbiage, when we don't have that confrontation, it makes for a much more pleasant life, doesn't it? So that's an area of humility that God has worked on me about. My wife would just punch me if I ask her, why isn't dinner ready? She's one of the keyboardists, by the way, so if you want to talk to her about it later. But humility gives us permission to not be entitled. So let me conclude here. I've already gone longer than I normally talk, so I've used all my words today. What can I do in 2024 to activate humility in my life? You need to think before you speak. Stop sending snarky, disrespectful, and condescending texts. Stop feeling the need to respond to every snarky, disrespectful, and condescending person who does their best to put you in your place. So think before you speak. Don't send that text. Don't send that email. Don't make that phone call. Humility is not being entitled. Stop believing that you are owed anything. Don't rest your laurels on your title, your age, your appearance, or your pedigree. Stop being entitled. Humble people serve others. Be proactive about finding ways to serve the people in your life, especially those you work with. And that it will be an open door to spiritual opportunity like you've never seen before. When you begin to serve those people who do not deserve to be served, God will step in and bless you. Humble people don't hold grudges. Be proactive about finding ways to serve the people in your life, especially those you work with. I'm sorry, I missed it. Be quick to forgive, even when it is undeserved or even when there has been no apology. You're not owed an apology, honestly. It's nice, right? It's nice for people to apologize to you for the things that they've done, but some people don't even know how to do that. So just allow them the grace, give them the grace to not apologize and just move along. Some people will do something tremendously ugly to you, and then they'll just walk on. That's their apology sometimes. They don't continue to bring it up, or they don't continue to remind you. Humble people trust that God has a plan. The path to success can be filled with challenges, conflict, and really tough days. However, when we trust God with the process and humble ourselves, every step of the way we will be refined to become the person God needs for any job. Matthew 23:12 says this, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." If you want to be exalted in 2024, I think you have to look at the areas of your personal life where you may be lacking humility. I think if you ask God, hey, where can I up my humility game in 2024? God will show you exactly the specific areas in your life where you can do better. And it's not something, so I said this has been a 4 or 5 month journey, and it's definitely not a journey that has a conclusion for me personally. There's always going to be areas in my life where I need to be and act more humbly, where I need to demonstrate more humility. But I'm willing to take that chance. I'm willing to put the work in. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, that's not true. If the old dog is willing to learn new tricks, then it works every day. And the reward, I think, am I looking for a reward? Am I looking to be exalted? Am I looking to be applauded and lauded and celebrated? Not really. I'm just willing to, at the conclusion of the day, to hear God say, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Now let's see if we can do better tomorrow." And so in 2024, I pray that for you. I pray that this would be a year where you could say, "I believe I've gotten on the road to humility, to being more like Jesus." Let me pray. Father, thank you so much.